Okay, we are, it says an error occurred. Okay, we are now recording. So let me introduce myself. My name is Abby Jarvis, and I work at QGive. If you're not familiar with QGive, we are an online fundraising platform, and we do all of our stuff online. So we do year-round fundraising and peer-to-peer fundraising and text giving and a bunch of other stuff. And we focus a lot on giving nonprofits the tools they need to raise money well. Unfortunately, what we don't do is major gifts fundraising, which is why Claire Axelrad is here, and we are so excited to have her. Before we get started, let me tell you a couple of things. We are going to record this webinar. So I'm recording it right now, and you will get this in your email inbox as soon as probably tomorrow, unless something holds us up, but I don't foresee that happening. As many of you know, you can ask us questions or use the chat box to talk to us. I'm actively manning these, so if you have a question, I will flag them and ask Claire at the end, or if it's a technical question, I will try to help you right now. I will also be tweeting the highlights of this. If you're an active Twitter user, you can follow along with me at #QWebinar, or you can tweet your own. There's also Charity Clarity, this little handle down here, which is Claire Axelrad, and you can follow QGive at QGive as well. Claire Axelrad is with us today, and if you have not had the pleasure of sitting in on one of her webinars, you are about to have your mind blown. She's a veteran fundraiser. She's got more than 30 years of experience on the front lines of fundraising. So she's talking to you as someone who can relate to the struggles and the victories that you have every day. She runs clarification.com, which is a fundraising and coaching website that she calls her own little mini online fundraising school. And one of the major recurring themes on her blog is the significance of major gifts fundraising and how to do it well. So she is going to have some absolutely wonderful knowledge for us, and I am so excited to hear what she has to say. So Claire, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. You need to get rid of your slides because I can't see mine.
Okay, I will make you the presenter.
Okay. All right, so welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time out today to further your professional development. That already makes you smart. And today we're going to have smart tips for smart people. Among the most common questions that I get from people are, where do I find major gift prospects? And it's a great question. And it's something that's important to give some serious thought to. And it's why I've subtitled this session, Preconditions to Major Gift Fundraising Success. But first I wanted to just...
Claire?
Yes?
I don't think your slides are showing. Did you push the button to share your screen?
I thought I did, but you don't see the slide?
No. Let's try something really quick. I'm going to change the presenter and back to me. And I'm going to change this to you. And now you should have gotten a prompt to share your screen.
Which I did.
There it is.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. So Abby already introduced me. I hope that if you have not checked out my one-stop online fundraising school, that you do check it out. I try to be somebody who can be your ongoing guide in whatever you're doing in fundraising all year long. But now, let's get to the meat and potatoes today. And before we do, I'd like, Abby, if you could launch the first poll. I'd like to find out what your role is in your organization. Abby?
Yep, it just said that I launched it, and it looks like so far 35% of you are directors of development or annual giving, 39% of you are other. We've got 3% who are board members, and 9% who are executive directors.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's really helpful, and I hope whatever your role is, whatever your title is, you'll be a big part of major donor development. And here's why. They're really, part of my secret agenda for this session is for you to get everyone in your organization pumped up to develop a robust major gifts program that's going to sustain you through good times and bad times. And you need as many referrals from as many folks as you can get, staff, board, volunteers, donors, and not just development staff. Major individual gifts are the single largest source of philanthropy by far. And this is data from the most recent Giving USA report. And it shows that 72% of annual gifts come from individuals. Not foundations, not businesses, individuals. And then when you add in that 8% of gifts come from bequests, 80% of giving is coming from individual donors. And a Bank of America study of high net worth philanthropy revealed that 2/3 of all household charity in the US comes from just 3% of total US households. So we're dealing with a narrow slice of folks who, if you do it right, have the potential to give you the lion's share of all your philanthropy. So speaking of getting pumped, before you can get to cultivation and solicitation, you have to fill your major gift pipeline with the right prospects. This isn't rocket science, but you do need rocket fuel. If your tank is empty, if you jump to cultivation and solicitation without priming your pump with a good portfolio of folks who are worth your efforts, you won't get very far. So your fuel is your prospect list. And assuring that you have the right list and know how to work it is really the key to securing and sustaining major gifts for your organization. Today we're going to talk about how to fill your tank, which is something most nonprofits don't spend near enough time on. And specifically, I'm talking about building what I call your qualified, rated, and tiered major donor prospect list. You don't want to try to launch your rocket or do major gift cultivation or solicitation without the right fuel in your pipeline. The other word for this pipeline is major gift portfolio. And way too often I see nonprofits spinning their wheels because they have the wrong portfolio. It's too small, it's too big, or it has the wrong people in it. And that means they didn't take the time to go through a smart process of identification and qualification. And today you're going to learn it doesn't take special skills to do this, just hard, systematic, step-by-step work. Today we're going to go through 9 steps to build your major gift portfolio with the focus on identification and qualification of your most likely prospects. And we're also going to cover 3 list building essentials, the things that are going to count for 80% of your major gift success. So 9 steps, 3 essential characteristics of major gift prospects. That's all you need to remember at the end of this session. Let's begin with the first step, which is picking your major donor amount by asking, what makes a donor major? And it reminds me of the old fable of the chicken and the pig, which many of you may be familiar with. When you have a dish made of ham and eggs, who's more committed, the chicken or the pig? Well, the chicken provides the eggs, which are not that difficult to produce. Each egg is like a token gift, relatively easy to give. The chicken does this out of habit. It's a usual transaction. The pig, in providing the ham, makes a sacrifice. The pig is really committed. The pig has skin in the game. The pig transforms from pig to meal. So it's a passionate sacrifice like a major donor's philanthropic investment, while the chicken is only involved, like a regular donor or a token supporter. So investors are all in. They become your true partners, and they represent a very thin slice of your donor base. So how do you know where to slice it? What makes a donor major versus a regular annual giver? You begin with a cutoff. And there's no one definition of what constitutes a major gift. Every organization is different, but one quick and dirty way to attack this is to divide your entire database in thirds. And this is something I learned from Jay Love, who's the founder of Bloomerang. So you look at your database, and those who have given you 0% of your budget, stop putting your energy there. I always purge people from my mailing list after 3 years of attempting or failing to engage them. And if they're donors, I purge them after 5 years. Those who give you 10% of your budget, develop a communications plan for them. Put them on your regular annual giving track and stick to that. And then those who give you 90% of your budget, that's where you want to focus the lion's share of your time and your budget. Most organizations pick an amount and say that's our benchmark. And for years, many organizations have used $1,000 as their major gift benchmark. What I find really strange about this is that it's so arbitrary, and when I began in fundraising, which was 35 years ago, $1,000 was the benchmark. So you would think that there would have been the teensiest bit of inflation. So why does this matter? Why does it matter what you set this benchmark at? It matters because if your major gift prospects are getting away with giving you $1,000 when they could or should be giving you $10,000 or $100,000, and you are praising them to high heaven by saying, you're a member of our insiders circle, our $1,000 club, we love you, you might not be raising enough money to fulfill your mission or to serve all the people you could be serving. So let's figure out what your amount should be. First, you use your math. So the first step is to review your donor records to identify the top 10% of your annual individual donors over the past 24 months. And you want to include people who gave through family foundations and donor advised funds, because this is the functional equivalent of an individual. You don't write grant proposals to these people. You're looking for people it makes sense to cultivate so they continue and increase their giving. You want to look at their cumulative giving over the year, not just single gifts. So if someone gives you $100 a month, they're a $1,200 donor. Then you want to look for patterns. What is your average major gift? Does this feel like a good amount for your major gift amount? In the case that you see on the screen, it's kind of skewed by a very large $25,000 gift. So that probably is the average gift that comes out, which is $3,950, is probably too high. So what if you threw out the top $25,000 gift and recalculated? Then your average gift would be $1,611, which is called the trim mean. And that's getting closer. You can also look at what your median gift is. And here, it's somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000, which is similar to what the trim mean found. So now you start to use your judgment. And you pick something. And let's say you chose $1,500 because you want to have the most prospects possible. Now you run a report from your database to determine how many people gave at that level or above cumulatively in the past 12 to 18 months. And those you consider your current major donors. Now see if you can pick up a few folks who may have lapsed this year but gave in the previous 36 months and are still very good prospects for a major gift. So here you added 2 people, Keisha and Lena. And then perhaps you add some brand new prospects, a couple of people that your board suggested, in this case Mel and Ned. So you're up to 10 on your $1,500 plus major donor prospect list right now. The next step is to evaluate your available resources to work this portfolio. Can you imagine personally cultivating and making face-to-face asks with each of these people in the coming year? And you want to guesstimate at this point how many visits you think it will take to cultivate and solicit these people, depending on how much you're asking for and how loyal and familiar these people are to you. So here, since this is a portfolio of 10, I've guesstimated 43 visits, and that seems doable. It's like 1 visit a week or less. It seems doable if you have other things in your job description. Note that if you're a major gift officer, you will have an annual portfolio probably of about 150 prospects, no more. But major gift officers, true major gift officers, have no other responsibilities. They're regularly out of the office visiting prospects. They're not putting on events. They're not writing grant proposals. They're not sending e-appeals or doing direct mail merge mailings. So they might be making 2 to 4 visits a day. If you have more people on your list than you can handle, your major gift amount is too low. You need to revise it upward. If you have less than 10% of your donor base on your list, your major gift amount is too high. You really want to remember and adhere to the Pareto rule here, the 80-20 rule. Sometimes people say it's now a 90-10 rule, where you want to put 80 to 90% of your energy towards building relationships with the most rewarding segment of your donor base that's going to give you 80 to 90% of your money. So my best advice again is to endeavor to move at least 10% of your donors to higher levels of investment. Okay, so now you've got the level of investment you're looking for. Where do you find people who give at this level? Okay, what about the richest person in the community? Bill Gates has a lot of money. He should give here. Oh, what about getting a celebrity to be our spokesperson? I bet Oprah would persuade others to give. Does anybody know her? What about the parents in your kids' private school? I bet that's probably a good list. Now, I'm kind of joking, but do any of these statements sound familiar to you? You probably already recognize the problem. Every organization in town is saying the same things. These folks are on everyone's lists. Just because someone has the ability to make a major donor investment doesn't mean they have any linkage to you that makes them a likely prospect, or that you have any way to reach them. Doesn't mean they're interested in what you do, and it doesn't even mean they're philanthropic. Ability is not the same as inclination. Standing alone, ability means nothing. Brainstorming a list of wealthy people in your community is a worthless exercise standing alone. There are much better ways. Major gift prospects have to have 3 things, and these are the 3 essential things I told you you need to remember. Linkage to your cause. In other words, they've given before, they've been a client or a patron, they know one of your board members or your staff, etc. Interest in your cause. Just because a family member was treated at your hospital doesn't mean that your prospect wants to build you a new hospital wing. Linkage alone without interest doesn't suffice. And then ability to give. And yeah, we hate to talk about money, but it's important that the prospect have the capacity to make a major gift if you're going to put them on your major donor cultivation track, because otherwise you're just wasting your time. So here's the kicker again. They have to have all three. So rather than beginning with ability, which is where most people start, begin with linkage and interest, because these are unique to you and your cause. The best linkage is that they're a current donor. You won't generally add a lot of non-donors to your major gift caseload unless they have a very strong linkage, like they just joined your board, or the president knows them really well and is willing to cultivate them, or maybe they're a former alum or a former client or a former patron who recently indicated that they have a strong interest in becoming more involved philanthropically. The other thing to look for in this vein is people who share traits with your current major donor investors. You want to review your database and look for similarities among your current donors. This might be their age, their gender, their profession, or the way that they're linked to your organization. And you don't want to guess at this. When I worked at a large community center, we had a gym, we had several preschools, we had a big arts and entertainment complex, and it was accepted wisdom when I arrived that the people most likely to be major donors were the ticket buyers to the arts and entertainment complex. Well, when we actually went into the database and analyzed it, we found that the actual greatest predictor of major gift likelihood was gym membership. And those people had not even been on the major donor radar. So spend some time thinking through which demographic and interest groups are prevalent among your constituents. And I find it really helpful to create personas for them. And these are a bunch of different personas up on the screen. It's a marketing technique that can be really useful in crystallizing your thinking. And there are lots of templates out there for creating personas. I really like Nonprofit Marketing Personas Workbook. That's by John Hayden, and you can find it on the Social Bright website. And I also like the 12-point marketing persona checklist by Heidi Cohen, and you can find that online as well. I also delve into this in my upcoming online major gift course, which I'm running for the first time twice this year. It's starting on July 25th. It's 8 weeks, and I'll try to tell you more about it at the end because you can still catch the early bird discount, I think, until midnight tomorrow if you're interested. Okay, so here we found when I was at this community center that we had a lot of Busby businessmen. So a lot of mid-career civic-minded businessmen who made $200,000 or more, had kids in private schools, and non-working wives. So we made those sort of like, let's look for those people because they tend to be our major donors. We also had a lot of Wanda widows, well-off women living alone who had time on their hands, they were well-educated, and they seemed to be pretty receptive to cultivation. And we had a lot of Paula parents. These might be your primary constituents if you're a school, or if you know that you have lots of donors who are parents who have young children. So you start to think about what might be interesting to them. All right, so you have a preliminary idea now of what you're looking for in terms of linkage and interest. Now, suss out their ability to give. And were you to purchase donor analytics, they would look at the things that are on the screen. They would look at gifts to other nonprofits, which are things that you can find in annual reports, in donor honor rolls, in programs. And the donor search company did some research and found that if somebody makes a $5,000 to $10,000 gift at another organization, they're 5 times more likely to make another philanthropic gift elsewhere than the general population. If they made a $100,000 gift elsewhere, they would be 32 times more likely to make a philanthropic gift elsewhere than the general population. So gifts to other nonprofits is a good clue of ability. Political giving. Just $1,000 in lifetime gifts to the federal election campaign puts you in the top 1/10 of 1% of the US population in terms of capacity to give. And you can find free records of political giving at the fec.gov website. Participation as a trustee on a nonprofit or foundation board. Per donor search research, they found that this participation is a more powerful signal of future philanthropy than any wealth indicator. And if you think about it, it makes sense. These people are invested in the social sector, they understand philanthropy, they have capacity to give, and they're likely to be receptive to cultivation. The other wealth indicators that services you buy look at are holdings in real property and things like mansions and yachts. This stuff is important because you don't want to put people on your major gift cultivation track who can't afford to make a major gift. If you put somebody who's only capable of making a $500 gift, they're going to clog up your pipeline and prevent you from doing what you need to do to uncover and meet with true major gift prospects. And this extends to not putting people on your list who, let's say you have a $1,000 donor who gives $1,000 every year like clockwork. Maybe some of those people can go up and become $5,000, $10,000, $100,000 donors. But if you determine that this person is never going to be able to give more than $1,000, then you want to take them off your major gift portfolio. Keep them on your annual giving list. Don't write them off, but you just don't want to pour an outsized amount of resources in their cultivation. Okay, so where do you look for the people who are going to be your really good prospects? Most of them are in plain sight. I don't know why this Homer Simpson is moving. He never moved before. That's very interesting. Cool. So I've never met a nonprofit that didn't have major donor prospects hiding in plain sight. The reality is that very few major donors fall from out of the blue. So folks who have already given to you, again, are otherwise really closely connected to you, but who haven't given what you consider to be a major gift yet are in there, and they haven't because you haven't treated them like a major gift prospect. So like your closet, you can shop in your closet. Beginning with what you already own is a lot less expensive and time-consuming than going shopping for new clothes or new donors. So how do you find the gems? If you're like me, weeding out a closet can be really tough. But, I always tell myself, Claire, you're not going to be able to wear all of these clothes. You're not going to be sufficiently able to love the ones that you like because there's only so many days in the year. So you want to scour your closet for the keepers. And what you're going to discover if you take the time to look closely is that you have three distinct groups. It's the keep pile, and this is the 33% or so of the folks on your list who are going to want to develop a relationship with you. So you might have a whole list of prospects, but on average, only about 1/3 of those people are going to want to be cultivated. And we're going to talk more later about how to figure out how to qualify those people who really want to be cultivated by you. Then you've got the sell pile. These are the folks you hand over to your annual giving staff. Someone is going to use these. Someone's going to work with these, but not you. And then you have the donate pile. And these are the ones you let fall off your list, most likely because they lack important criteria that would justify putting significant time, energy, and resources into trying to secure a larger gift from them. Let other nonprofits get their major gifts. So you really, really want to look closely in the middle of your database. The middle has donors who already love your mission. They just may not know you well enough yet to love you unconditionally. And these are the folks you want to identify and work with. And for most small to medium-sized organizations, this falls somewhere in the $100 to $999 realm. For others, it could be the $1,000 to $9,999 range, or even higher. My guess is that you have these donors, but you aren't treating them any differently than the smaller donors. Yet shouldn't a $100 donor or a $250 or $500 donor receive different treatment than a $25 donor? So you want to unbury these folks and take a closer look. You only generally really want to add to your list those mid-level donors who are close to your major gift amount and who meet other criteria you establish. So let's take a look at some of these other criteria and evaluate who's worth the investment on your part. And no doubt you've heard terms like database mining, donor analysis, and predictive modeling. And you can purchase these services if you have the budget, and they can be very useful. But you don't have to, because there are common indicators these services use. We looked at some of them earlier, like real estate holdings, sitting on boards, giving to other philanthropies, giving to political causes. Even if you purchase donor analytics, you'll still have to do a lot of your own analysis, because the purchase stuff contains a lot of inaccuracies and outdated information. They also look at other stuff that you can determine yourself. And this is a great way to prioritize the people that you want to spend time with. So look at how recent somebody made a large gift. The closer in time it is to now, the better. Someone who's been lapsed for several years probably belongs more to the bottom of your list because they need some cultivation. Cultivation has probably lapsed. Look at their pattern of giving. Do they seem to have a desire for frequent contacts? Have they made multiple gifts within the year? Do they have a pattern of upgrading their gifts? That might indicate an inclination to give more and also to be connected with more. Interest. The closer to your core mission, the better. And one way to assess this is to look at what people designate their giving for. People who pick something very specific are giving you a lot of information about how to cultivate them. Size of gift. Obviously, the bigger the better. People who beat the averages. So you can run a list of just your mid-level donors to determine, okay, how much did all of our mid-level donors give in the year? Let's divide by the total number of mid-level donors to get the average mid-level gift. Then you can also get the average number of gifts per mid-level donor. Then you want to look for people who beat these averages. So they are now floating to the top of your mid-level treasures. And I also like to look at people who give first-time gifts of $100 or more, because these people are really saying, I really like what you do. This is more than a token first gift, so it's demonstrating a real interest. So in many ways, these are self-identifying prospects. They're telling you by the pattern of their giving that they really love you and that they're ripe for cultivation. And by the way, also look at folks who notify you that they've had a change of address, because these people are saying, hey, we don't want to lose touch with you. All right, now it's time to go outside your closet and identify some new names. So I want you to think of your constituencies as concentric circles with your board and staff at the core inner circle, and you work from the inside out. So the folks you talk to first are your board and your staff, and then your current donors, your lapsed donors, your volunteers, your clients, other users of your services, and then friends and associates of all of these people. And then you go to folks who have a demonstrated interest in similar causes. Then you go to your advocates and influencers, including people who are really active with you online. And then the rest of the universe. Most people start with the rest of the universe. They say, you know, how about Bill Gates? How about Oprah? You want to ask for referrals from all of these folks. And then once you get new names, you've got to research further, which means talking to these folks. So let's review a few ways to do this. Everyone in your various circles interacts with different groups. Each is out and about and comes in contact with folks who could be supportive of your cause. When they do, you want to make sure they let you know this, that letting you know is on their radar. So you need a debriefing system, a systematized way for folks to communicate back to you on a regular basis. Otherwise, the fact that Joe told Sally that he'd be really interested in learning more about this organization she's on the board of will get lost. You'll never know that Joe told Sally this. So it gets lost, it gets wasted. So let's launch another poll. I'd love to see what the best systems you're using right now to get major donor prospect referrals. So check the ones that you find that you are really using and that are working for you.
All right, if y'all want to go ahead and vote, I'm pretty excited to see what you guys have to say. Looks like so far, appointments with board members is way ahead. A lot of you are also holding regular debriefing meetings, which is awesome. But yeah, Claire, it looks like 58% so far are really depending upon appointments with board members.
Okay, that's great. And I'm going to encourage you to do all of these things here. These are some things that I have found really helpful. One is sending a form that says, let your friends be our friends. And I send that to my insiders, which would be the board. Sometimes I send it to major donors who, you know, would like to help with our fundraising efforts as well. And I also send it to executive management staff. And I ask them to return it with the names and contact information for folks they know might have an interest in what we do. And I provide a space for them to comment as to why they think this person might be a good prospect. So I can then talk to them later on and sort of validate that that's really true. And I provide checkoff boxes for them to indicate the ways that they would be willing to help with the cultivation, such as saying, yes, I'd be happy to invite them to an event or a tour or a house party. Yes, I'd be happy to write a personal note on an appeal or an invitation. Yes, I'd be happy to help with a solicitation when the time is right. I encourage you to set up appointments with each of your board and targeted other donors to pick their brains. And it sounds like many of you are already doing this. The other reason to do this is that your board members and your major donors are people who are probably in your major donor pipeline. And this counts as a way of cultivating them, of asking for their feedback and asking for their help. And it's a way to begin to build stronger relationships with them as well. And then you want to plan ahead to hold debriefings, especially after you have major fundraising events. I like to hold these weekly with my ED, who is out and about in the community and otherwise will forget to tell me who she met with. and also bi-weekly with program staff who also meet a lot of people who could be very helpful because they're grateful for the services that they or their friends or family received. With your staff, consider making it a regular practice for them to send you a spreadsheet with information about folks they may have entered into separate databases that they keep. Many nonprofits, I don't know what yours is, don't have a single database where everybody who gets in contact with your organization is. So like if you have a separate volunteer database, it might be really useful for you to know that somebody is volunteering, because that's another link to you that you need to know about. And then with any of your insiders, you can ask them to deliver copies to you of performing arts programs, class and church rosters, local university and hospital donor listings that they might come across, annual reports of charities that they support. Some of these may be very good prospects for you, but you don't want to just put these names in a drawer. You'll never look at them. You can hire people very inexpensively through services like Fancy Hands and Fiverr to research and get you the names and addresses of these people. You can also do quick internet research on them to see if any of them might qualify as major gift prospects for your organization based on LIA, linkage, interest, and ability. A few more research tips. Don't waste your up close and personal opportunities. Whenever you are in a room with supporters, whether it be an event, a house party, a tour, or a committee meeting, take advantage and ask people, who else do you know who might be interested in becoming more engaged with our organization? If you get in the habit of doing this, you're going to have a never-ending supply of new prospects. You can also set up Google alerts for particular prospects who might be in the news. You just enter a query, you say Bill Gates, you put your email address, and then Google will instantly send you information as soon as its algorithm maps it. And I use this with my board members, and at one point I found that someone who had had a $200,000 a year job had been promoted to $1 million a year job. And so that year we asked him for a larger gift. We got a much larger major gift from him. And I wouldn't have asked if I hadn't known that there had been this change. Social media also has a wealth of information. Much of what you find there you couldn't find anywhere else, especially about your prospects' interests and passions. So you can follow people on Twitter and see what they tweet about. And, you know, I found folks to be surprisingly responsive on Twitter. So don't be afraid to reach out to them, but just make sure that when you do, you bring some value, that you offer a compliment or a kind word or some help, comment, opinion. You retweet an event that they're speaking at. You don't want to ask for anything at this point, including a follow back. You're building a relationship, and that begins with you as in sort of the role of giver. I also love LinkedIn for prospects who are professionals. There is a wealth of information about people's background and interests and connections on LinkedIn. And I love Pinterest, because for people who are active on Pinterest, you can again find out a lot about their hobbies and their interests. For example, I found a donor who had a big architecture board on Pinterest, and I had no idea that he had that interest, and it was really great information for an upcoming capital campaign that we were having. All right, so once you've got this big list of prospects, you've got the top 10% of your donor base, you've got the people hiding in the middle of your database, you've asked those close to you for additional names, and you've done some due diligence to find out a bit more about these folks. It's time to decide who to qualify for serious cultivation, which brings us to peer review. So this is how you screen people and further qualify. And I say there's three kinds of prospects. There's pie in the sky, pie in your face, or your piece of pie. Pie in the sky are the folks that don't have any linkage, interest, or ability. They're really not attainable by you. So you use peer screening to validate the linkage, interest, and ability, making a long list of prospects shorter, getting it down to a manageable level. Pie in your face are the people that you spend more time on than is merited. The people that I mentioned who are always going to be a $1,000 donor. Not all donors merit major gift cultivation. And I know it might sound a little cold, but it's just practical. Would you spend $10,000 to make $1,000? Probably not. And then finally, there's your piece of pie. These are the folks that have all three, linkage, interest, and ability, and are attainable by you. Peer review can uncover personal information that formal research doesn't find. Information about people's personalities, what they're interested in, their family members, schools they've attended, their philanthropic interests. Plus, you find out who knows who. Now, just like online and purchased research, things are not always as they seem, which is why I prefer a group rating session with a number of people in the room, maybe 6 to 8 people, over individual rating sessions. Because if Joe tells you that George is super wealthy, Joe might not know that George carries a lot of debt. So Susie might say, hey, you know, he is wealthy, but, and then you sort of start to flesh out the picture better. You don't want to necessarily assume that something that one person says is necessarily true. Or it reminds me, there's an old Danish proverb that goes, beware of a half-truth. It may be the wrong half. So group sessions are great because people play off one another. So Joe says, Sam works at Acme Company, but that's all he knows. And then Stella says, oh, I know the VP at Acme Company. Maybe I can do a little behind-the-scenes digging. Or Nancy says, I think Sylvia could get 10,000. And this prompts Joe to say, oh, no. They just sold their company for millions. She can definitely make a much larger gift than that. So that's how those sessions work, and it's really useful stuff. If you have folks in diverse geographic locations, then maybe an individual session makes sense, where you send people a form and they check things off the list, and they tell you, they send it back to you, they give you a bunch of information, and then you follow up with a phone call to sort of suss it out with them. Individual sessions are also good for people, and there are people who don't like to go into these group sessions because they consider them to be sort of gossip, and it's just not their cup of tea. Okay, so now you're getting to really qualifying your prospects, and that means determining whether your prospect is going to be responsive to cultivation. And before you start to make what is called a moves management plan with a bunch of cultivation moves for an individual, you want to make sure they want a deeper relationship with you. So you don't want to knight them, you want to invite them. What this means is, I've made the mistake in the past of saying, okay, everybody over $1,000, they're on my major gift list. I've knighted them as a member of the major donor club just because they gave $1,000. Don't do that. First, take those people and invite them to be cultivated. Because again, you might have 400 people on paper that look like you have to be responsible for them, and that's way too many people. But generally, only about 33% of your caseload will be receptive to your moves. Here's how you find out. So these are your preliminary steps. You send a letter and you introduce yourself to your prospect. And you say, hello, thank you so much for your past support. I'm writing at this point to say I'd really love to get to know you better. If you're new, this is a great opportunity to say, I'm new here, I'd love to meet you and find out more about your philanthropic interests. You're basically asking for their opinions and their advice. This is not a meeting to ask for money at all. Then you want to make a follow-up phone call to these folks to make sure that they got your letter and try to set up a time to maybe meet with them, or take the time right now to ask them why they got involved. You want to ask open-ended questions so it's all about them and they can talk to you and tell you why they're involved. If you don't reach them, leave a warm, friendly message with your contact information. Mention you'd love to find a time to set up a quick in-person meeting. Okay, what if you don't get any response to your call or your letter? Then you can send a little survey that tries to find out what programs they like the most, why they got involved with you. You can send this via email or snail mail. It sort of depends on what contact information you have and what you know about your donors' communication preferences. And of course, you want to ask just a few questions so that people will respond. Sometimes I ask, what's one adjective that you would use to describe our organization? And a lot of times I'll ask what programs are of greatest interest to you. Try to think from your donor's perspective, like what might they want you to know? Why would they want you to know? Like if they care about cats and not dogs, they might want to say, hey, I'm really interested in cats. Like, don't keep sending me information about the dogs. All right. What if they still don't respond? If you get no response, send a little handwritten note card. Mention that you're sorry you've been unable to connect and ask the donor to let you know their preferred method of communication. Give them lots of ways to contact you: email, phone number, mailing address, even social media. Then, if you still haven't heard back, send an invitation to an upcoming event or a tour or a volunteer opportunity, and follow up with a call or an email to let them know that the invitation was sent and ask them to RSVP to you personally. And then finally, give it one more try. If you've got a top prospect who's eluded you, try a final phone call that's similar to the one that you made in the beginning. That's how you qualify. If after all these steps your prospect doesn't bite, it's time to call a spade a spade. They don't want to be cultivated. They don't want to build a closer relationship with you. They just want to give and not be bothered. And that is their right. You need to respect that. Otherwise, they might stop giving entirely. But a lot of people will bite. And now you want to take all your qualified donors and arrange your list in tiers. And this is where the Pareto rule applies again, the 80-20 rule. The cupcake at the top is going to be your best one, so you want to spend in the neighborhood of 50% of your time here and about 30% of your time in tier B. You want to really enjoy these cupcakes because they're going to count for 80% of your satisfaction. You're also going to be able to get some enjoyment from tier C, but not as much. And if you try to overindulge the bottom tier, you're going to get sick. It's too much. They belong in the annual giving track. So to keep your major donor cupcake tower from overflowing, to keep it at 150 or less, depending on how much time you have to devote to major donor development, pay attention to what happens as you begin to move folks through a series of cultivation moves. The first moves are the basic qualifying moves we talked about. And again, if they resist your attempts, remove them from your list. Then, as you continue with moves for the folks that you thought were receptive, you might find out that some of these people still don't say yes, or they might say yes at a level that doesn't merit keeping them in tier A or tier B. So you want to recalibrate. You want to move some of these people to tier C, into the annual giving manager's domain, or the annual campaign strategic pipeline, where they're going to get mostly mailings and not as much face time. Or some of these people you might move into a legacy giving track. Maybe they can't afford a $5,000 annual gift, but they could leave you $50,000 or maybe even their entire residence in their will. So you don't completely write these folks off. You put them in another tier of legacy giving prospects, and you create a separate cultivation pipeline for them. Okay, so let's look at this again a bit more closely, because it's a really important step before you begin to devote your limited resources to cultivation that's headed towards an ask. A is where you focus 50% of your time with just 10 to 15% of your major gift prospects. Here is where your strategies are going to be the most individually tailored, most up close and personal. And it just makes economic sense to put your resources where the greatest promise lies. Then B is where you spend 30% of your time. This will be a little less than half of your prospects. And C, you spend 20% of your time. It's more than half of your prospects, but they're likely going to give you only 20% of your goal. Okay, so now you should be ready to roll. You've got this wonderful list. You want to target an ask goal for each of the prospects on your list now. And then you want to create individual cultivation plans, sometimes called moves management plans, and begin the cultivation so that you get them ready to say yes when you make the ask. And moves management, cultivation, major donor solicitation, these are really important topics too. But sadly, too many nonprofits skip over the list building part. So they end up doing all that good stuff with the wrong prospects. And then they don't get results. And then they say, oh, our nonprofit can't raise major gifts. So don't fall into that trap. Let's just summarize here. Your first step, define your major gift amount. Your second step, find your current donors at that level. The next, add lapsed donors that are at that level. People who gave at that level in the past 3 to 5 years. Then add mid-level donors who are close to that amount, who meet other criteria that you've established, like longevity of giving, a pattern of increasing gift size, a gift above average for this group of donor, other types of close involvement with your organization. Then add names referred by those who are close to you. Remember the concentric circles. Conduct preliminary research using Google or purchasing predictive modeling modules or using services like Blackbot Analytics or Wealth Engine, or doing it on your own. Then do rating and screening sessions to get a clearer idea of whether these folks on your preliminary list really do have linkage, interest, and ability. Hone this list to keep it manageable, and then begin to actively qualify with the preliminary moves that we discussed to see, are these people receptive to building a closer relationship? Then tier your list into A, B, and C to determine the percentage of time you're going to allocate to each. And continue to refine your list as you go along, dropping people off, adding people on, to keep it manageable and assure that you're working with folks who are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. Remember, you are doing all of this to work smart, to feel in control, and to raise more money. And building a great major donor portfolio is really the gas in your major gifts tank. It's really how you get to success. So I want to take a few questions now and remind you that if you are not yet signed up for my Clarity Click It newsletter, you should do so. You'll get a free donor thank you calls ebook and script. I hope you will join Clarification School. There is tuition like any regular school, but it's just $100 for the whole year. And I basically tell you everything I know. And my major gift course that's coming up, students get a $200 discount on it. And if you register before midnight tomorrow, you get another $100 discount. So if this might be interesting to you, take a look at that on my website. All right, Abby, do we have any questions?
We do have a couple. One person asked if there were any tools you'd recommend to help build and maintain a major gifts pipeline.
Any tools that I would recommend? Well, it's all that I went through in the webinar, I guess.
Oh no, I think they mean like a platform. So I know you mentioned Blackbaud and mentioned a couple of other things.
There's a lot of really good donor databases out there, and I don't endorse any one or another, but actually if you Google donor databases, there are a number of services that have a listing of all of the top ones, and they outline, what different ones are good for. And most of them are pretty good. A lot depends on what your budget is, what you can afford, but you do want to look for their ability to track cultivation moves and to let you run reports that show the actions that you're taking so that you can keep track of where people are along the way. And most of them do that, but some are easier than others. And, I don't have experience with every database out there. I've used Blackbaud, Razor's Edge. I've used Bloomerang. Both of them are excellent. I don't know. I hope that answers the question.
I think that does. I'm also familiar with Bloomerang there. I can personally attest to them being a pretty cool CRM. I've got a question from Bruno here. I'm going to rephrase it a little bit, but he asked about trying to contact major gifts prospects who are outside your community. So it looks like he's asking particularly about an international foundation based in Brazil. Are people open to donating to organizations that are kind of outside their community, or do they tend to give within their own communities?
Oh, I would say that totally depends on the individual. Of course, people donate to organizations that are outside of their country. What is challenging with major gift development is that it's harder for you to bring these people on site, show them what you're doing, and meet with them in person. So luckily we have so many online tools at our disposal that you can actually share a lot of work in the field with people who are nowhere near what you're doing by sending videos. And you can, do virtual meetings online using Skype and things like that. If you work for a university, they tend to have people who go out and meet with their alumni, in various different states, of course, and they just bundle up their visits so that, it makes sense in terms of time and travel. But you don't really have to do that now with the online video is a really great way to show people what you're doing. And
that's a wonderful point, especially if you are an organization that doesn't have the budget to travel internationally to work with major donors. That's a beautiful point.
Yeah, major gift fundraising is all about passion. And really what it is uncovering what people's passions are and making a match between people who share the values that your organization enacts. So when you lead from passion and you feel passionate about the organization And also, we're getting into cultivation and asking at this point, but I always tell board members, you don't have to, fundraising isn't that scary really. If you reframe it, don't think that you have to memorize a lot of facts and figures, but just think about it as sharing with other people something that you are really passionate about, something that you really love. Like if you loved a great movie that you just saw or a new restaurant that you went, you would tell your friends about it because you'd want to share. Why, as a board member, are you not willing to share how passionate you are about this organization whose board you sit on with your friends? Maybe some of your friends would be interested in getting involved as well. If not, that's okay too. But please share.
That's a wonderful point. And I know it's a good reminder. I know it's so easy to get caught up in caseloads and appointments and everything that sometimes we can forget that the most powerful fundraising, or one of the most powerful fundraising tools you have in your arsenal is your passion about your cause. So it's a beautiful reminder. Marie Esposito asks about how to handle major donors who are already kind of in your portfolio. When you talk about splitting up your caseload, are you including existing major gift donors in kind of that pyramid of how to split up your time, or do you devote time apart from that kind of pyramid to maintain relationships with major gift donors?
Well, as I said, when you were creating your portfolio, you are doing a combination of current donors and current major donors, donors who are already in your database but maybe in the middle of your donor base, and new prospects that you're adding from referrals. So you definitely want to have the current donors in that pipeline. But when you start to make individual cultivation plans for each of the people in your annual major gift portfolio, you're going to probably be able to spend less time with the people who are currently donors. That's why I said guesstimate the number of visits you're going to have to make. A current donor might just need 1 or 2 visits, whereas a brand new prospect that somebody referred to you might need 5 or 6 visits.
That's a very good point. Yeah, it does. I've got one more. I know you mentioned when you were talking about rating that some people can become uncomfortable when you're evaluating prospects because they feel that it can get gossipy. So my question is kind of twofold. Is A, what steps can we take to properly evaluate a prospect without seeming gossipy, and how can we reassure our coworkers or other staff members who are worried about that?
Right. Well, one thing that you do is you make it clear at the outset that everything that you say in the room or any information that they put on paper is confidential. And I always, on rating lists, I stamp confidential in red ink all over them so people feel reassured. And you explain, again, why you're doing this. And it's really in order to further the mission of the organization and to involve people who may really want to be involved. Often people think, oh, well, we're trying to steal money from these people. We shouldn't be talking about these people and how much money they have and asking them to give, and it's just very distasteful. And this comes from a place of thinking that fundraising is all about money and that money is a dirty thing, because it's still one of the biggest taboos in our society. People will talk about politics, sex, and religion, anything, before money. So you take it away from money and you remind people. I mean, any meeting that I ever have with board members and donors, I always want to have a mission moment in it. I always want to read a letter from somebody who was helped to remind people again of why they're there. And I would do that in a rating session as well, so that everybody is feeling kind of warm and fuzzy about what we're doing and thinking, hey, maybe there's other people that would like to get this warm and fuzzy feeling as well. And then you say, you know, we're going to keep the conversation civil. We're going to only talk about things that we know. And we're trying to, you know, really flesh out a picture of people that it makes sense to invite to become more invested with us at the major gift level. And then the people that really aren't comfortable, you don't have them sit in that group session. You just talk with them one-on-one.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I loved your point about the stamp. I know I personally am a very visual person, and I know I'm sure a lot of other people are, and that would be a huge reassurance to me on a personal level that there's nothing, everything's above board, so to speak.
Right,
So
and
that's very helpful.
you also don't share this information online. You don't send these lists and have people return these lists on computer. You know, you don't want
True.
to have that sense that somehow somebody else might see this, it might go to the wrong person. You do this all with paper, and they put it in envelopes, and they give it to you personally, and
Yeah,
yeah,
very old school. I like it.
right.
I think those are all the questions we really have time for. I know some of you, we weren't able to get to your questions. If you still have questions, Claire is displaying her contact information. And I know Claire, you're really active on Twitter, aren't you?
Yes, I am. And you can also email me directly, claire@clarification.com. I'm happy to answer questions if you have them.
Perfect. And so Claire is always available if you have any questions. And then I too am available if you have any questions about QGive and how we can help you raise money. Let us know. We are always here. Claire is the major gifts expert. We're not, but if you want help with online fundraising, that we can help with. I also know Claire talked a lot about major gifts donors, which is not a segment of donors that has a lot of conversation around it. When you get the recording from us of this webinar, I'm also going to give you a little bit of information about an upcoming webinar that will be next month that is centered on mid-level donors specifically. It's going to be presented by Rachel Muir, and it's called Mid-Level Donors, Epic Insights on the Most Neglected, Misunderstood, and Lucrative Donors. So that is coming up also. Claire, I want to thank you so much for working with me on this. You are a delight as usual. And everyone, I wish you the happiest 7-Eleven Slurpee National Cow Appreciation Day ever. So, bye everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Abby.